Every week on the PGA Tour, players put 14 clubs in a bag and bet their careers on those clubs performing exactly the same way under the most intense pressure in sports. A single yard of extra spin, a half degree of launch angle drift, a missed line off the putter face. That is the difference between a win and a missed cut. So when you track which brands show up week after week in winning bags, in major top tens, and in the hands of players who could choose literally anything on earth, patterns start to form. And those patterns tell a story that marketing budgets alone cannot explain. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which 5 brands have earned that trust, why they've earned it, and what separates them from everything else on the market. Before we get into it, let's address something that most equipment videos skip over entirely. Tour players are paid to use gear. That is a fact. Endorsement deals are worth millions, and when you see a player carrying a certain driver, you cannot automatically assume they chose it freely. A tour bag is not a pure trust signal. But here is where it gets interesting. Pros are not robots who play whatever they are handed. Many of them mix brands across categories. Data from Golf 365 shows that clubs in certain categories vary widely among pros, even those who are sponsored by one brand. A player signed to one company might still carry wedges or a putter from a competitor because the contract allows flexibility in certain slots. When a brand dominates not just one category but multiple categories, and when their gear keeps winning across different tours, different conditions, and different player profiles, that tells you something real. These are the 5 brands that keep clearing that bar. Let's start with the one that should surprise absolutely nobody: Titleist. If trust were a currency, Titleist would be the richest company in golf by a wide margin. The numbers are almost absurd. According to what's in the bag tracking data from 2025, Titleist held roughly 28% of driver market share among pros. That made them the most used driver brand on the PGA Tour. But drivers are actually the category where Titleist faces the most competition. Their real dominance is everywhere else. Titleist was the most played brand of driver, iron, and wedge on the PGA Tour. They had 124 active pros carrying their equipment, more than TaylorMade or Callaway. One golf media outlet described being slightly surprised at just how deep Titleist's reach went across every club type used by the best players on the PGA Tour. And then there is the golf ball category, which is where Titleist becomes almost impossible to argue against. Over 70% of tour pros put their faith in the Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X every week. The Pro V1 was used by 35 pros, and the Pro V1X by 28 in 2025 tracking. Callaway was a distant second at around 12%. TaylorMade sat at roughly 6%. That is more than 7 times any competing brand in the ball space. The Pro V1 was first introduced in October of 2000, and it was the first non-wound solid core premium ball to hit the tour. Billy Andrade won the very first tournament it was used in. That ball changed how professionals thought about spin control and distance consistency off every club in the bag, and Titleist has held that stranglehold for 25 years. In 2018, Titleist introduced the Pro V1X Left Dash as a custom performance option. It was a lower spinning, higher speed version designed for players who wanted to bring the launch down while keeping distance. For years it was only available through custom orders, but it gained serious traction after Bryson DeChambeau used the Pro V1X Left Dash to win the US Open at Pinehurst No. 2 in 2024. By early 2026, Titleist rolled out updated versions of the Pro V1, Pro V1X, and Pro V1X Left Dash with faster cores and refined aerodynamics. The Pro V1 celebrated its 25th anniversary in 2025, and Titleist said the new version was reformulated with the purpose of increasing ball speed and improving spin slope. Now here is the part that challenges a common belief about Titleist. A lot of golfers think of them as a ball and wedge company. They picture Vokey wedges and Scottie Cameron putters, and they assume the clubs are an afterthought compared to flashier brands. The data says otherwise. Among 2025 major championship top 10 finishers, roughly 45.7% used Titleist drivers. That was the highest of any brand by a massive gap. Ping was second at 28.6%. TaylorMade was at just about 5.7% in major top 10s. When the pressure is highest, at the 4 biggest events of the year, nearly half of the best finishers had a Titleist driver in their hands. That is not hype. That is the opposite of hype. Titleist does not rely on being the flashiest brand. They rely on pros knowing exactly what the club will do on every single swing. Brand number 2 is TaylorMade, and this is where the conversation shifts to raw speed and star power. TaylorMade is the brand that pushes the envelope on distance technology, and they back it up with some of the biggest names in the sport. Players like Rory McIlroy, Scottie Scheffler, and Collin Morikawa carry TaylorMade equipment. But beyond the roster, the performance data tells its own story. In 2025, TaylorMade absolutely dominated the fairway wood category on the PGA Tour. TaylorMade fairway woods featured in 55% of PGA Tour victories that year, with 38 wins. The next closest brands were Ping at 11 wins and Titleist at 10. That is not a small lead. That is a runaway. And it was not limited to standard fairway woods. Mini drivers have grown in popularity on tour, and TaylorMade controls roughly 78% of mini driver usage among the 18 pros tracked carrying them. Callaway held about 17%. Titleist about 6. Tommy Fleetwood, Justin Rose, and other winners in 2025 used TaylorMade mini drivers in their winning bags. The driver space is more contested for TaylorMade. They held roughly 19% of driver share among pros in 2025, which placed them fourth behind Titleist, Ping, and Callaway. Their major championship top 10 presence was surprisingly low at around 5.7% for drivers. But this is where looking only at one metric can mislead you. TaylorMade's strength is not just about who carries the driver. It is about how the driver performs in independent testing. MyGolfSpy named the TaylorMade Chi 4D their top overall 2026 driver, scoring high across distance, accuracy, and forgiveness. That combination of tour validation and testing lab performance is what makes TaylorMade one of the five. There is also a fascinating tension with TaylorMade around new technology and regulation. Their low-spin dot driver heads have sparked ongoing debate about what should be allowed within USGA and R&A rules. Some pros actually hang on to older TaylorMade models with known performance characteristics rather than switching to the newest release, which tells you something about how trust works on tour. It is not always about the latest thing. Sometimes it is about knowing exactly what your club will do on a tight fairway in a Sunday final group. Brand number 3 is Ping. And this is a name that does not always get the attention it deserves in mainstream golf media. Ping is the stability brand, the consistency brand, the brand that fitters describe as the golden standard for a specific range of golfers. Golf WRX fitter notes for 2026 described Ping as a golden standard around the 95 to 105 mile per hour swing speed range, highlighting stability, forgiveness, consistent spin, and easy launch. That swing speed range covers a huge number of golfers, both professional and amateur, which is part of why Ping keeps showing up. On tour, the numbers back this up. Ping held roughly 23% of driver share among pros in 2025, making them the second most used driver brand behind Titleist. But the real story is in the majors. Among major championship top 10 finishers in 2025, Ping drivers accounted for roughly 28.6% of usage. Combined with Titleist's 45.7%, those two brands alone covered about 75% of major top 10s. Every other brand in golf was fighting over the remaining quarter. Ping drivers like the G430 and the G440 LST have been regular fixtures in those top finishes. The G440 LST earned multiple PGA Tour wins early in the 2026 season. Ping also has a strong presence in hybrid usage, which matters because hybrids are one of the most precision-dependent clubs in the bag. When a player needs to carry a shot exactly 220 yards to a tucked pin on a par 5, that hybrid needs to produce predictable launch and spin every time. One thing that sets Ping apart from some competitors is their approach to change. At the 2025 Ryder Cup, several players used older Ping driver models rather than switching to brand new releases. This is actually a trust signal in disguise. When players can play anything and they choose to stick with a club they already know, it means the performance gap between old and new is small enough that familiarity wins. Ping builds clubs that age well in terms of player confidence, and that is not something you can put on a spec sheet. Brand number 4 is Callaway, and this includes their putter brand Odyssey. Callaway has been a fixture at the top of the equipment world for decades, and they continue to compete in nearly every category. In 2025, Callaway held roughly 20% of driver share among pros, putting them third behind Titleist and Ping. That is a strong position in the most competitive club category in golf. MyGolfSpy ranked the Callaway Elite Triple Diamond as the top driver in their 2025 test. Golf Digest's hot list for 2026 included several Callaway Quantum driver models. When independent testers and tour pros both gravitate to the same brand, that overlap matters. But Callaway's real secret weapon might be Odyssey putters. Putting is the most personal and feel-dependent part of the game, and Odyssey has built a reputation for offering a wide range of head shapes, insert feels, and alignment systems that give players options no matter what their stroke looks like. While TaylorMade's Spider putters have won in multiple categories and Scottie Cameron putters from the Titleist family remain the prestige choice, Odyssey holds a significant share of putter usage across professional tours. Callaway also benefits from something you cannot measure in a robot test. They invest heavily in their fitting infrastructure and tour support. When a pro needs a club adjusted between rounds, when they want to test a new shaft, or when they need a wedge regrooved during a tournament week, that support system matters. Pros trust brands that show up consistently, not just with great products but with great service when something goes wrong at the worst possible time. The fifth and final brand is the one most casual golfers overlook entirely: Srixon and their sister brand Cleveland. This is the underrated trust brand. Srixon does not have the marketing budget of TaylorMade or the legacy name recognition of Titleist, but their equipment keeps showing up in places that matter. Srixon drivers and irons appear across 2026 hot list categories. Cleveland wedges remain widely respected among serious golfers and tour players alike. The reason Srixon and Cleveland belong on this list comes down to a simple idea. Pros do not trust hype. They trust repeatability. A Cleveland wedge might not generate headlines the way a new TaylorMade driver does, but when a player needs to spin a 60-yard shot exactly the right amount to stop it within 3 feet on a firm green, they reach for a wedge that has proven it can do that over thousands of repetitions. Cleveland has built that reputation through decades of focus on the short game. Srixon's ball offerings also deserve mention. While Titleist owns the overwhelming majority of the tour ball market, Srixon's Z-Star line has carved out a loyal following among players who want a slightly different spin profile or feel. And in the iron category, Srixon competes directly with the best from Titleist and Ping, offering forged blades and player distance designs that tour players trust for distance control and workability. Now I want to address something you might be wondering. Why not Mizuno? Mizuno makes some of the most beloved irons in the history of the sport. Their reputation for feel is basically unmatched. But this list is about full bag trust, and Mizuno's presence thins out considerably outside of the iron category. Srixon and Cleveland together give you coverage across drivers, irons, woods, and wedges. That full bag credibility is what separates a brand pro's trust in one slot from a brand pro's trust across their entire setup. There is a bigger takeaway here that goes beyond brand names. The golf equipment industry wants you to believe that new means better. Every year, every brand releases a new driver, a new iron set, a new ball. The marketing language promises more distance, more forgiveness, more spin control. And sometimes the improvements are real. But look at what happens on tour. Players use older models at the Ryder Cup. They stick with wedges for years past their supposed replacement cycle. They choose a ball that has been the standard for 25 years over any newcomer. Trust is not built in a product launch. Trust is built over thousands of competitive rounds where a tiny miss can cost someone hundreds of thousands of dollars. These 5 brands, Titleist, TaylorMade, Ping, Callaway, and Srixon with Cleveland, keep showing up because they have earned that trust through real performance under real pressure. Not every golfer needs to play what the pros play. Swing speed, skill level, budget, and personal preference all matter. But if you want to understand what equipment holds up when the stakes are highest, this is where the evidence points. 5 brands, decades of proof, and a pattern that marketing dollars alone cannot explain.